Today, learners are growing up surrounded by content, creativity, and constant connectivity. So the question is, how can educators meet them where they are and turn those everyday influences into meaningful learning experiences? Our next session, Teaching Gen Alpha, Lessons from Instagram, YouTube, and Gaming, will explore how platforms and environments that students engage with daily can offer powerful insights into how they learn, interact, and stay motivated. Please help me welcome our speakers. We have DJ Fraiolia, the founder of Nutrition Connection at LLC, and Dr. Yana Rana, Dev, Associate Professor and Chair at Florida A&M University. Please welcome them.
How y'all doing today? Thanks for showing up. So today we're going to talk about Gen Alpha and bringing gamification to the classroom. So I want to start off with a little introduction about myself. So again, my name is DJ. I'm a fitness and nutrition professional, and you might start to wonder, how does that tie into education? So I'm going to get there. Growing up, I was overweight. I used food as a coping mechanism to deal with problems at home. It led to depression, anxiety. It led to a decrease in my academic performance. And it wasn't until I was 22 that I decided to take control of my life, and I started to realize how nutrition played a real role in that. My academic performance increased. I started getting more confident. I'm on stage speaking amongst all of you now. And now it's led to me creating my company, Nutrition Connection, helping reach where students are at, which is through gamification. So Nutrition Connection is a digital platform bringing nutrition education to where Gen Alpha is through gamification and interactive learning.
Thank you. Well, I'm Satyanarayan Dev. I was here on a panel yesterday as well. So I kind of introduced myself as a boy with the toys who builds the toys he plays with. So gamification is part of the toys that I build and play. So, and that kind of being the department chair of biological systems engineering, that automatically ties into whatever I teach. But I just heard DJ say that he was overweight. I still am. So there is a lot of connection with nutrition. And we were actually talking about how this nutrition education aspect, the gamified nutrition education aspect of that, can not only help high school and lower end, but also go up to the university end and help students there as well. So I've been trained as a food processing engineer, but kind of evolved to become the boy with the toys today. So kind of have tentacles in different areas, coding, programming, gaming, all those stuff. So here to talk about how to teach Gen Alpha specifically. So
yeah, I think it's important, being that you have the background being a professor. Where do you see gamification take off when it really connects with Gen Alpha?
Well, first of all, we all need to take into account gamification often comes off in the wrong note. People think that we are kind of dumbing it down. It's not so serious anymore. People just play, they don't learn. The whole concept is different. This is actually bringing experiential learning and putting it in the hands of the students, especially the Gen Alpha who like to be very competitive, who like to be winning all the time, who has the attention span of a hummingbird. So we want to make sure that we tailor to that generation and they still learn, because the future depends on them.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it touches on three things when gamification is working properly. It's agency. It's bringing them to have a sense of control. So they're choosing the different path within the game, but they're still taking on the content that we're presenting to them.
Absolutely.
And then also there's mastery, right? So with gamification, they're going back in trying to get the most amount of points, get to the highest point of the leaderboard. It brings into like how homework is. It's repetition. So it's repetition through gaming and where they are with how they interact with things. And then also Gen Alpha is really big on collaboration, teamwork with competitiveness. So when you bring gamification in, you hit on those three topics, and then they start to learn, they start to absorb the material that much better.
Absolutely. Well, oftentimes what this really helps is, like, for example, right now, the two of us are just sitting and talking. And I always take this example of this 5 blind men looking at an elephant. One touches the tail and says it's a rope. The other one touches the legs and it says it's a pillar. Nobody's actually seeing the elephant in the room because they're blind, right? But they only see what they feel, right? So that's what often happens in education when we don't bring that full picture. Like, let me take the example of where I have really successfully gamified, and it has gone to the high school level from the university. I started it off at the university level, but now it's been used at the high school level to bring interest in forestry and forest management for students. So one of the things that we do in the forest is prescribed burn, which is controlled burning, to make sure there is no fuel in the forest for wildfires so that they don't go so intense and uncontrolled. So, but how to teach a student to do a controlled burn without burning themselves? And you get to burn yourself only once. But if you do it in a virtual environment, you can do it as many times as you want. So 3 strikes, you're out. There is a leaderboard, high score. There is a protocol to follow, all safety procedures and precautions in place. Are you doing that in place? And if you do everything right and the burn is successful, the game's over, you got the higher score. So, and we kind of do that in teams. So this team is responsible to compete with this team, and they kind of fight it out and see who's the leaderboard. And of course, 3 strikes, you're out. So in real life, 1 strike, you're really out. So that's the biggest difference and the advantage that brings to the table. They can have experiential learning without the cost of it in the classroom. And what we do is we kind of project on the main screen what they are playing, what they are seeing in their virtual reality headset is projected on the screen, so everybody sees what's going on as well. So the competition kind of gets intense, but they learn a lot at the end of the day. So in today's AI world, where giving assignments, writing assignments has no meaning because they're not writing it anymore. They don't even know how to write anymore. So it's better to just, at my level at the university, I'm not there to teach them how to write. I'm there to give them the content and see how they can apply it in the real world. So that's my focus, and the gamification aspect of it really helps me do it.
I think it's really interesting too, right? Because you show how advanced it's gotten. But does anyone remember Oregon Trail when we were kids, playing that in the classroom? So gamification has been around since then. That hour that I was in school playing Oregon Trail was one of the best times that I had in school. It was most time I felt I was really learning. I was interacting more with the environment that I was in. It's just now we're at a point where Gen Alpha learns in a way that curriculum is not there yet. So we have to meet them where they're at, and that's honestly the hallmark of proper and great education for the individual, in my opinion with it.
Absolutely. Well, as we are at it, does anyone in the room has experience either as a user or as a developer? Yes, please. We can hear you well.
You're good. Mm-hmm.
So how do you answer the objection that gamification and catering to those, arguably bad tendencies that are the student generation alpha students is encouraging that educators should focus on?
So I totally understand where you're coming from with it, and I don't think it's that really students don't know how to write, right? So think of AI as the tool. It's not the system that's going to take over everything. It is a tool for the educator. And it has been shown in numerous studies done by Stanford that gamification does improve academic performance only when the teacher is still involved, still mentoring, still leading the student. So it's not so much that we put this AI tool in place, they're going to gamify it, just play games and get academic performance increases. The teacher still needs to be involved. And what we're doing with gamification, at least with my app Nutrition Connection, is it's taking some burden off of the teacher, right? No more report generating. The app's going to do that for you. It's going to set up red flags for when there's performance drops, when there's engagement drops. And that's not to say that AI is the be-all, end-all, and you just get that red flag and you move forward. The relationship still needs to be there between the teacher and the student, because you may know that Steve's having something going on at home and AI is flagging it as him having poor performance or engagement, but you know that something else is happening. So it's more like, hey, this is going on with the student, but you have the information there. So again, I don't think it's that we're taking them and dumbing it down for them. I think there also needs to be design assessments. So it's not so much that they're going to use AI to cheat. So a student that properly understands the concept, they can orally speak about it. So oral examinations. Also, in a AI standpoint, you can have an assignment where it's like, here's the prompt, put it in AI, and then expand on it without AI intelligence. So it gets them to start the concept, start understanding. So really what I'm trying to say is we need to use AI as the tool. They still need human control. AI should never be integrated without human control, which is where nutrition connection comes into play, human vision, human strategy, AI deployment.
Yep. But just to address your point that are we kind of encouraging the bad attributes in students? Well, everyone in this room would agree a competitive spirit is not a bad attribute. But with that competitive spirit, are you trying to get ahead or are you trying to pull the person down? Right? So that is bad. If you're trying to pull who's ahead of you down so that you can stay ahead, that's a bad attribute. But trying to get ahead is all what we do every single day. That's what keeps the society growing. That is a very good thing, a competitive spirit, outdoing yourself. Compete with yourself, outdo yourself every single day. That's the way to grow. And that's the culture, and that's the attributes that we want to inculcate in our students. And that's what we promote every single day. Okay, yesterday you burnt yourself thrice. Try it again today, right? So until you actually get it right and complete a proper prescribed burn of the forest, right? You did it once, maybe just by fluke. So got to do it again, got to do it again. Build that mental muscle so that you can close your eyes and do it. I hope not, but I'm just saying to that level of comfort, you need to get to that level of comfort. And you can do that because even if you're trying to do the prescribed burn and practice it in the real world, you don't get that amount of practice in such a short time because there is only so much forest to burn. Right? But here you can do it over and over again. And some of the things, it's not one size fits all, right? So doing it in a longleaf pine forest is different from doing it in a deciduous forest or doing it in the northwest of the United States. So different forests pose different challenges. And how do you overcome? So that builds critical thinking. So yes, we kind of tell you the theory, but then when you are put in spot, you know, not just applying the theory, but also applying your critical thinking to improvise on the spot. That's what we do in real world all the time. We got to improvise on the spot because things are never ideal. But the theoretical, mathematical calculations and stuff, it's all based on an ideal scenario, right? So let's say I'm talking about a heat exchanger design, and I'm like, we assume there is no heat loss to the surrounding. That's the worst, stupidest assumption you can ever have because there's always heat loss to the surrounding, right? But you have to assume that to do that theoretical mathematical calculation. But then when you simulate, you can add all those complexities and see the real world, how it is different from your on-paper world that you do all your mathematical calculations. So there's a huge difference in the understanding and perception of things, especially in engineering, when they can actually do that experiential learning. And again, as an educator, it costs me way less. I don't have to have those heat exchangers in my lab. They're there virtually. I can build everything virtually, and they can do everything virtually. Yes, that synaptic feedback that you would get dealing with an actual heat exchanger may not be there. That's the only missing part. But I hope we'll get there soon. Make that virtual as well, getting that synaptic feedback that you would get when you're actually dealing with it. See, one thing we have proven to ourselves is that our world, or our perception of the world, is based on the 5 senses that we have. by manipulating, these are the 5 inputs, and here's a processor. So these are the five peripheral inputs that go into it. We process it and we interpret it. Surprisingly, we all seem to interpret it more or less the same way, although we are individuals. So that's how we built the computers, based on how we do things: inputs, process, and output, right? So we have proven to ourselves, by manipulating at least 1 or 2 senses, which is the vision and hearing, we can actually take a person to a virtual world completely, and they perceive something completely different. So this actually opens up a world of possibilities to how we can kind of build things in without having to have them outside. So in other words, well, kind of a matrix concept we're looking at.
I think it's important to say too, right? So we speak about gamification, and you're bringing a real world example. It's not just so much we're playing games that don't have matter to it. It's, for mine, nutrition, they're gamifying it for interactive learning, but they are learning and building their nutrition plan throughout the whole concept of the game. So by the end of it, they have lifelong habits that they've just built, and it goes beyond the schoolwork, right? So nutrition's everywhere. After I finish school, I still need to eat right. I still need to be healthy. It affects how I am speaking, preparing for things. So I think it's really important to state that gamified, doesn't mean useless.
Yes.
You asked if anyone had experience developing gamified platforms or as a user, and I co-founded Experienceify, the world's first gamification-first learning management system. And I kind of wanted to address what the gentleman just asked about in terms of encouraging bad habits. So at the end of the day, as educators, I think we work in the context of what's happening in the world around us. And the truth is that kids are playing games, kids are being exposed to social media, kids are being pinged on devices right and left, and that's changed the way that their brains work. And we're not going backwards. And so I really see it as fighting fire with fire, because we can't change the context or the environment in which students are coming into school. So we have to kind of replicate them and leverage them to create the change that they want to even maintain interest. And if you look at, the learning pyramid, for example, lecture and just reading have very low retention, 5 to 10%, versus demonstration or even teaching others. And so the reality that can be constructed using gamification techniques, leveraging, the 5 senses, like, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Yes, that he talked about. Actually, the brain doesn't know the difference between experiencing something firsthand and imagining that it's happening. So we're able to create these real-world contexts or simulations that allow people to actually experience and leverage skills, and also achieve states of flow where they're challenged to the point where they learn in new ways through engagement. When I was a girl in the 1980s, my dad had me learn typing on Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing. And this was a very early game, and he said he would pay me $1 for every word per minute that I learned how to type. And I'd type, and if you get a mistake, a little fly comes onto the dashboard, and then eventually you crash because you have too many mistakes. But I ended up typing 80 words per minute when I was 12 years old, and making $80 back in 88 or whenever that was. And it's been a skill that has kept with me for my entire life. And I'm a online entrepreneur, and I use my typing skills every day, and it's made me tens of millions of dollars. That one skill that I learned on a video game back in 1988. So I think that as educators, we have to evolve with the times, and we can't go back to the Quaker schoolroom where we have the undivided attention of 10 people in the room and provide that kind of education. So it's not about turning things into games necessarily, but using mechanics that are based on psychology and the way that our brains work and the way that we naturally learn and grow and evolve, and every technique we have at our disposal to create student wins and outcomes.
Wonderful. Just to add to that, we are in Vegas. So some could argue that gambling is bad, and having a casino encourages gambling, right? But the point is, everything done under control to a limit is fun, right? And what we are adding to that fun is the learning aspect of it, is the critical thinking aspect of that. So we are adding those layers on top of having fun. So when you have fun, the retention of the information increases exponentially. And that's what we want to give them, because every time you win, every time you succeed, you get that dopamine shot. And Gen Alpha is all about the dopamine shots. Instant gratification, quick results, and seeing that they are successful gives that little dopamine shots over and over again, and they get to do it more and more. Yes, please.
So I'm a dean that oversees training of skilled trades workers at a Canadian Polytechnic University. And I wonder if you can address some of the structures surrounding, like, we know that, the next generation wants to learn through like AI and, virtual reality and augmented reality. I see it as a great learning resource, similar to you as an engineer. I don't want my students welding the building into destruction and destroying people's lives when they accidentally connect the brakes incorrectly. But I find that teachers want to teach how they were taught. So can you maybe from both perspectives address a little bit of like the surrounding structures to make sure that it's not just the students that are having a great learning experience or the clients that are having a great learning experience, but also, how do we upskill our educators so that it's not scary and it's not perpetuating the same systems that have been in place for many generations in this patriarchal, hierarchical educational system that we are part of?
For me, I think it's that teachers right now are overloaded, right? There's extreme administrative work that they need to do on top of how are they going to deliver it and engage with all the students, on top of keeping track of every student in class, how are we going to pace it so that they're all getting the education that they need through the specific topics. But with what AI would do for a teacher is it turns them into from the lecturer to the facilitator, right? Because the AI technology is tracking the student's progress. It can track everyone's progress, and that's just data now for the teacher to say, okay, this is where the design needs to change. So think of AI as the tool to deliver the content, whereas the teacher now can design and spend more time there. It also frees them up again from that admin stuff to spend more time on the students, which is where we want them to begin with. So in my opinion, the AI will help free them up to do what they went into teaching to do, to help the students, to mentor them, and to guide them.
And there is always this cultural connotation to that as well. But before I get there, your question about how to ensure in this patriarchal, hierarchical society, or the academia at least, to begin with. So, I was educated back in India where teachers are like next to God. They are the ones who show your path to God. So in Sanskrit, it's Mata, Pita, Guru, Devam, which is God. So Mata is mom. So that's your first pathway to attain God. Next is your dad who guides you. And then it's the Guru. It's your teacher who shows you the right path. So, and the teacher sits, the students stand in the class. Right? So you can imagine the difference, right? So and having come to the West, yes, there was a bit of a cultural shock, not from the societal culture, but from the educational culture. So, and I was back in Canada and I started teaching in Canada. So I had to learn to teach in this context, which was completely different. So when you say that teachers, or we like to teach the way we were taught, breaking that cycle is very important, because the classic definition of a lecture is that the professor's notes becomes students' notes without passing through the brains of either. Okay, so that's the classic definition of a lecture. So we don't want a lecture anymore. We have moved away from it, and we have seen that it's been more successful in terms of the student retention and their ability to learn when we use a combination of different techniques. So there's no single technique. So in other words, we don't want to say that gamification should replace any other form of teaching. It should complement all other forms of teaching that we have. So this is an added tool in our arsenal to help the students learn better, and this shouldn't be the only tool that they should learn from. Does that remotely answer your question?
Mm.
Yes.
Sure. So with my company, Nutrition Connection, it's not a one-time training. Here's your software and go. We are fully involved with them with 24/7 support that they contact. They get full onboarding training as well as onboarding onto the analytics so they know what they're looking at. It also comes into partnering with the school. So it's a partnership, not a one-time transaction of you're paying for my software and that's it. The school needs to be involved and have those trainings for the teachers and ongoing. So that's how I personally, with my company, address that question, because they need to have the training. They need to fully understand what the tool does and what they're teaching the students. They don't need to be the nutritionist, but they need to understand the concept of it.
And from a university context, we're talking about lecturers and professors. Yes, training is critical. We need to train them. But again, unfortunately, although it shouldn't be in place, what's in it for me is always the question they have. So incentivizing. So just as we're talking about the Gen Alpha wants to have these dopamine shots, so does the professors. So how are you going to give them their dopamine shots? It should be some kind of a reward, some kind of an incentive, not necessarily financial, but financial is always good. But you can always have some kind of incentives that motivates them. So what gets them to do it, right? So as long as that incentive is put in place, they are motivated to learn how to do it. So because they're old enough, not so interested in the games anymore, they don't want to play the game themselves, fine, what would get them interested in it? What kind of, for example, receiving the award yesterday was a dopamine shot for me, right? Sitting here, having the opportunity to talk to you all is a dopamine shot for me. So these are incentives, these are rewards that I am seeing for the hard work that I put in to teach my students in an innovative way, right? So that's what we need. We need to be able to show them what kind of dopamine shots that they can get and capitalize on that.
Yeah, I think that's important because the incentive for the teacher is, I think you got into teaching to see academic performance increase, students to be in attendance, less dropout rates. Interactive learning does all that. Personalized learning does all that. Again, the teacher needs to be involved, but I think what they'll see is when they incorporate this, kids aren't falling asleep in class. They're more engaged. They're ready to learn. And I feel like that's the dopamine that they'll like. They'll get to do what they wanted to do. They wanted to teach. They wanted to mentor instead of just calling out a student for sleeping in class or for not paying attention, not handing in their homework assignment.
You're welcome. But again, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to that question. You have to kind of understand your demographics and what motivates them and keep doing that. And then when the demographics change, you got to change that. So that's exactly what we're doing with our students. What worked for Gen Z not necessarily works so well for Gen Alpha. That's why we're looking at exploring other ways of making it work for the next generation. So,
leading into that, where would you say the difference is between Gen Alpha to Gen Z and millennials?
Well, I have a T-shirt that I often put on that has a floppy disk, a video cassette, and an audio cassette. And it says, I am this old. Okay? The point I'm trying to make is that I have had the privilege and the opportunity to live through this rapid transition of technology, going from those floppy disks and cassettes to virtual reality and all that we're doing, cloud-based computing and doing everything. But unfortunately, they don't have that. So expecting them to kind of make that connection to that depth is not fair, right? So this is what they have seen. This is what they have grown up with. So how to connect to them at that level rather than trying to bring them down to the beginnings of that. So, but one thing that does not change, as I just talked to you all about, is how we take the inputs, process input, outputs. That hasn't changed, for a millennia or two, right? So taking that, things that don't change, and connecting it to things that always change makes people make that connection themselves, right? So, so I'm starting with the fact that that connects all the generations. But then the difference comes in, as we just talked about, is the attention span becomes shorter and shorter the more they're exposed to technology, the more they're into screens, the more they watch TikTok. So the point is, the key aspect of TikTok is that keep it short and sweet, right? Everything has to be short. So YouTube, yes, you have the long videos and short tech shorts. And if you look at the number of views, the shorts get millions of more views than the long videos. Although the long videos explain the concept and in such detail, people don't have that attention span, time, and the patience to go through it. But shorts are quick and it actually sticks. So if you can deliver a content in that time, then you can get that concept into their head. So chunking is very important. It wasn't that important. It became important during the Gen Z, but it kind of became critical now with the Gen Alpha. Whatever you want to present to them, chunk it. And then kind of build it all up to show the big picture. So it's like Lego blocks. So yes, there is a big picture. So show them this is how it's going to look like, but let's get into the builder blocks of it. And then show them how to put it together so that they can also see the big picture as you are able to see from the beginning. So that kind of chunking and putting together concept always works in helping the students learning, at least from an engineering perspective. So I can vouch for that, and that is a major difference between the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, is that if you don't chunk, nothing gets there. You can go on and on and on about different concepts. At the end of the day, they didn't get anything.
I think what you addressed to is like you're meeting them where they're at.
Exactly.
It's where they learn the best. I'm a strength and conditioning coach at my old high school. And with the kids, for me, when I was told to go run, I would go run for the sport. And one day I was taking them outside and they had their phones out. And I go, what are you doing? We're running. They're like, we're playing Pokemon Go. It'll make us run faster and longer. It is in that moment that Nutrition Connection had the idea to gamify it in a way that it meets them where they're at. So I think that's really important. You understood that chunking is the way that they learn, and you bring that into your education portion of it.
Exactly. And that not only has worked in retention, it also has worked in their applications. So when I challenge them with real world applications, they do better. Definitely not the best. They could do better than that, but definitely better than just presenting the whole concept to them in one whole lecture. And also what I started doing that I just started this fall is that I put 5-minute videos, no lectures. And it's a flipped classroom, so they have to watch these 5 or 6 videos before coming to the class, because those are the builder blocks I gave them that they're going to connect and build a big picture in the class as a team.
Right.
So that, again, encourages collaboration. That encourages their screen time, which a lot of us would disagree, but that's what they like, right? So they get to see, but they get that little concepts, and here's the connection between these videos, and this is how you can get the big picture out of it, and that's what I am there to guide them while they are trying to figure out how to put those builder blocks together. My job there is just to be there as a mentor to kind of, and they're diverging from where they're supposed to, just knock them back into the track so that they do it. And when they do it, they feel that they own it. They not only got the concepts, but they get that dopamine shot. Hey, I figured it out. And that's the dopamine shot that I want to give them, because when they figure it out, it stays. So, when I was doing my undergrad, I was doing my computer, I was actually started as a computer science and engineering undergraduate student. But then one day I thought, okay, if I'm hungry, do I need computer chips? Potato chips. So obviously potato chips. So I went to food process engineering. That's something that's more fundamental to the survival of human beings. But I didn't give up my passion for computers. So I did have a computer sales and service while I was doing my undergrad, all that while. And right after finishing my undergrad, my first job was with Dell Computers. And everybody was, what does a food processing engineer know, and what is he doing in Dell computers? The point is, all of them who were hired with me, they hired 100 people together. It was a cluster hire, so there were 100 computer hardware technicians who were hired at Dell, and I was one of them. Everyone else was either an electronics and communication engineer or a computer science engineer. So they were like, and we had this written test as part of the 5-level interview, and I was the topper in the technical exam because all of them knew what to do. I knew what not to do because I've done it. My first output from the computer that I built, can anyone guess what it was? Smoke. So I learned by mistakes. So I learned it in a way that most other people don't get to learn how to build a computer. And that stuck with me.
Maybe some
Sorry?
were
Is that an interference somewhere? Okay. Anyways, so and that's what I want to bring to my students, that experiential learning. Because if you experience, you will not only know what to do, you'll also know what not to do. Going back to the forest fire, you will know what will get you burnt, right? So, and it's unfortunate that you cannot try it in the real world. So this is the best place to try where you're protected. So
I can relate to that too, because honestly, it's lived experience, right? I told you I was overweight. I had to lose over 95 pounds and everything. And I understood firsthand after that point what nutrition did, not just physically for me, but mentally, and why that needs to be in the school systems. Nutrition education is not in many schools. And that's the fact. And to get them to learn, it needs to be interactive to meet Gen Alpha where they are at. So it's through my mistakes, through my challenges that I understood this is the education I needed when I was a kid, so I'm putting it into this environment.
yeah, and while we were outside, I was giving him an example of an instructor who just left my institution. She's a nutritionist. She still is, but not at my institution anymore. And what she used to do to connect to the Gen Zs, she raps. So she gets the concept of nutrition through rap with them in the class, and that stuck with them. That may not be so successful with Gen Alpha today because we need a different strategy. So the content has not changed much. It's just the delivery part of it, how we get to them. And meeting them where they are helps us deliver the content. And if that is our job, let's better do it well. So.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time.